Good morning, everybody. We'll get started shortly here. A couple more people logging on, a few people. All right, good morning. Good morning. My name is Brent Miller, Managing Director with SVN Miller Commercial Real Estate. Our mission every day is to create amazing value with our clients, colleagues, and communities. And this is one way of doing that to help serve the community and provide some additional information for our clients, colleagues, and communities. Now I'd like to introduce your co-host, our co-host, Wesley Cox. Wes is a CCIM and a key member of the top producing HANA team here at SVN. Wes and I and the entire SVN team would like to welcome you to our 11th annual Commercial Real Estate Forum. Our normal venue for this forum is held at SU every single spring. And however, the current environment where we have COVID-19, we're shifting gears to create several virtual commercial real estate forum events that will be held at 10 a.m. every other Wednesday morning over the next couple of months as we transition through this recovery. And we will recover. We've invited several local, regional, national, and local dynamic speakers that will enlighten you on economic forecasts, best practices, trends, and opportunities on shifting gears in this changing commercial real estate market. In order to make this forum as interactive as possible, we welcome and encourage your questions. There's a Q&A box down at the bottom of your screen. Please type in any questions you wish to ask, and we will forward those on to our keynote speaker throughout the presentation. Now, I would like to introduce and have Wesley Cox introduce our keynote speaker. Wes.
Thank you, Brent. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for taking time out of your precious day and joining us today. We really appreciate it, even though we're in a little bit different setting than we usually are in the beautiful Salisbury University. So before we get started today, before I introduce our guest speaker today, we're going to do something a little different. We've created a little poll. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that poll in just a second. And between now and the end of this, we'd like you to answer those questions. They're really simple. It's going to take maybe 30 seconds of your time. We don't want to distract you too much from the valuable content we're going to share with you this morning. It's 5 questions. They're all multiple choice. There's even a couple yes or no's. So please answer that. It'll provide valuable information to us, as well as we're going to share the results, of course, with you guys. If not by the end of this presentation today, we'll share it at our next event in 2 weeks. So on that note, we're going to do this every other Wednesday, but we had some scheduling things to have to work through. Our first 2 events last week was Mayor Jake Day, City of Salisbury. This week we have another local presenter talking about the local market. Next is going to be June 13th. That's going to be 2 Wednesdays from now, and that's going to be featuring Anirban Basu. So he's going to talk a little bit more about the macroeconomic market as opposed to the first 2 presentations today and last week, or on the micro market. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that poll now. And just 1 second, you should see it as a option to start filling out. So while we have that running between now and the end, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker today. Our speaker today is Rick Tilghman. Most of you on the call today and that we watching it later have probably either heard of Rick or have had the pleasure of meeting Rick. Rick came to us in 2005, prior to Brent and Amy and the rest of us even joining what was then Sperry Van Ness. So prior to him joining us, he rose to the top ranks over at CarMax. And the location he managed at CarMax was one of the biggest in the entire country, where he was able to manage a large sales team and increase their sales by over 1,200 units per month. So naturally, Rick was a born salesman. He came to us hitting the ground running. And over the last 15 years of his tenure here, he's had well over 500 transactions, represented dozens of landlords and sellers, and he's now in the position. Have we put out a press release? I don't know if we put out a press release. I think we did.
We have not.
I don't think we put out a press release. So now we're doing it live. So you're being introduced today to our newly appointed Managing Director and Director of Brokerage and Property Management Services. So today Rick's going to share some insight on his vast knowledge and broad reach. And I'm going to go ahead and unmute Rick so he can go ahead and get started. Give me 1 second.
There we go.
Okay, Rick should be unmuted.
Morning, Rick.
All right. I am. Well, thank you very much for that warm welcome. And yeah, I'm not I don't always put myself out there too much. So I appreciate the press release, a little bit of a spotlight, but I like to kind of just get to work and do things. And so very excited to be here. Very excited to have been with SVN or Brent and Amy for the last 15 years and watch them grow and help them grow. And look forward to, my position today and helping the company grow even further. So with that, we'll jump right into it. There's so much I could talk about today. So I'm going to, Wes always says I talk too much. So I'm going to try to keep it down to a minimum. And I would rather, get to the point where we get some Q&A going on so we can, I can really answer some questions that people want to hear in case I don't touch on it in the slideshow presentation. So with that being said, we're going to, I'm going to dive right into this thing. Let me share my screen here. Hopefully, we should all be professionals at this now with all the video conferencing we've been doing. So let me see if I can get there. Do you guys see that presentation?
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay, good. All right, awesome. So welcome to the second series of the 2020 SVN annual forum. As Wes talked about, it was usually for slated. It's one of our biggest events that we have every year at SU, and unfortunately, to the circumstances that we are all living with right now, it had to be postponed. But then shifting gears, this is where we are today. So now we're virtual, as most things are today. So what I'd like to talk about today is more of a leasing aspect for tenants and landlords about the rent relief. Rent relief has been a big thing for commercial real estate and investors. So I'm going to talk about today who's asking for the rent relief, and what are some of the options for the landlords and tenant as well. Getting into that. There we go. So kind of an overview of what I'll be talking about is the timeline of COVID and the impact that it had on the commercial businesses, who was impacted, who's paying and who's not paying, not in a bad way. The CARES Act and the PPP, Payroll Protection Program, about abatement, deferments, extensions, and getting back to business. So it's going to be kind of the overall setting of what we're discussing today. So kind of just to go over, not that, everyone lives it, and I'm sure no one's really forgotten it, but just kind of go over a timeline of, and more of a local, we'll look a little bit at the national level as far as rents and stuff, but a lot of this will be focused on our region. And as most people on this call are affected, probably, Maryland and Delaware are closer to home for you. So kind of the state of emergency, Maryland declared it on March 5th, Delaware the 12th. Restaurants closed on the 16th in both states. They were one of the first ones affected by this. And this is the one that, when this happened, that's when kind of everyone sat back and said, "Ooh, this thing's for real." They're actually, closing stores down or businesses down. So then you had the closure of non-essential businesses. They could only do curbside pickup. So that was March 23rd for Maryland, March 22nd for Delaware. So kind of in line with one another. Then on a federal level, you had the CARES Act and Paycheck Protection Program signed, the largest stimulus bill that was out there. That's been signed for $2 trillion. Stay-at-home order shelter for Maryland was March 30th, March 22nd for Delaware, which then obviously curbside was prohibited for non-essentials as a stay-at-home. If you weren't out getting something essential, yet you weren't supposed to be outside. So at least some of those businesses that could do curbside and kind of limp along and stay alive, they are now shut down. April 7th for Delaware. PPP loans April 16th, that runs out. So a lot of people, a lot of small businesses, they were applying for these loans. They were waiting on these loans. It ran out on the 16th. They did do a second round that started on the 27th. That gave an additional $310 billion. And then that's where you kind of started seeing some small businesses really take advantage of that and start to receive that money. Then reopening of businesses, phase 1, May 15th for Maryland. Delaware's phase 1 is targeted for June 1st. However, they did do some, a couple weeks ago, they lightened up a little stuff. They did allow curbside to continue. And I think they opened up some beaches and stuff, but they have a plan of June 1st to really bring out their first phase. So looking forward to that, obviously. So who was impacted in this? So like I said, the first group was the restaurants. They were the first to be closed. And unfortunately, and I'm sure they feel they're the last to be open. So they've had to adapt into delivery and curbside and do what they can do to stay open as much as possible. So they've been hurt from the beginning and still continue today. Hair salons, they were one of the ones that were impacted at the beginning, but they didn't just impact hair salons. They impacted all of us. We couldn't get our haircuts. We couldn't get our hair colored. We couldn't, people went months. Wes actually grew a beard, I think. He did get it trimmed a little bit, but it's looking good. So that affected everyone. They finally let them cut people's hair that were essential businesses that were still out there, but it was tough, really tough on the hair salons. Non-essential businesses, they were impacted. Employees, they were impacted. They were being laid off at record pace. We had 30 million jobless in 6 weeks, which we've had. That was a record pace. So we've had people, or a lot of people that were on the unemployment, but not that quick, not that fast. So what did that do? The systems got overrun. People, couldn't get through. They were going to get their money, just get in the process to get their money. So, they weren't receiving a paycheck. They weren't receiving unemployment. It was tough on them. Landlords, stuff on the landlords. If you're not receiving rents, how do you run your properties? How do you make your payments? You've got bills to pay. And then property managers, us as property managers, we had to step it up. We usually do weekly or monthly inspections. We bumped it up to weekly inspections. You had properties that were, dark. Most of the businesses weren't open. So, you had a safety issue. You had, vandalism you had to watch out for, break-ins. So, we had to monitor those stuff. Along with the police, we did talk to the police as well, and they were doing the same, especially at the beginning. Banks and lenders, they were affected. So it trickles all the way back up to the top where, they had to work with either whether they're business loans or whether they're property owner loans. Everyone was kind of was impacted by this in different ways. So pretty much almost everyone was impacted. It could be families, it could be workers, it could be kids, and the schools were out. Everything was impacted. Pretty much something that pretty sure none of us say or can say that we've lived through. So quite the experience, I think, here for everyone. So we'll kind of get into like who is paying rent, who's not paying rent. And when I mean not paying rent, it's just who is trying to defer or work out a deal. So looking at a national level, I broke it down into 4 sectors. So you have office as the first sector. So if you look at that, if you look at the first bar, which is March, and that's March and kind of the first quarter average. So that will kind of set the standard for it. And then if you look at April, we're only down 2%, 3% by May. So really not that bad, affected a little bit, not a whole lot. They seem to keep going. A lot of offices were essential business, and even the ones that weren't essential business, they could actually work from home to stay, they probably weren't as business as usual and not as productive, but they were able to stay afloat and apparently continue to pay the rent. Retail is the big sector. You can see nationally, it got hit very hard and is being hit hard. So in April is down 24%, and these are rents collected. It's percentage of rents collected. So only So 24% down in April and 40% down in May. So only 60%, and this is average. Some places were lower, some places were higher, but on average in May, only 60% of retail rents were collected. Industrials, similar to office, where it wasn't affected that much. It was down by 7%, then only down by 3% in May. So, that's a good sign there. Part of the reason for that is industrial is a strong sector right now, is you have a lot of services in that industry. In that sector that were essential. You also have a lot of logistics and delivery services that use that sector as well too. So right now it seems to be very strong. Multifamily, it was down a little bit, about 10% in April. It did jump back up to 7%, so it's down a little bit. It's not too bad, considering what we're in. I think a lot of people may have been down a little bit more in April. That's when people are going on unemployment, waiting for their stimulus checks. And but overall, it's not bad. And now we'll jump down to our, a regional sector, more the Delmarva Peninsula region. You'll see very similar trends. Office was down a little bit in April, down to 85% and back up to 88%. So it was only down 10 and then down 7% of rents collected. So, not too bad. Retail, which is the worst sector, hit in the region as well too. But if you notice, it's not as bad as the national was. So we were down 72 to 74% our collection. So that's only down 25% overall in April, but it went up a little bit in May. Industrial, the same thing. Multifamily, kind of the same thing as the national. It's down a little bit, but it came back up. A lot of it probably is to do with when they start to see the money and stimulus checks. So the one thing I want to focus on is the retail. So local versus national. So retail was hit the hardest, but if you notice, the local, we weren't hit as bad. And due to, there's probably a dozen reasons people could say, but, my speculation is that it was we're more of a tertiary market. So we have a lot of local and regional tenants and businesses in this area, and that are definitely supported also by the locals. So overall, in the big cities where you have a lot of the more condensed national tenants, where they're every other block, the same place, could be 5 blocks away, you have the same store. They were definitely hit harder. But I think in the tertiary market, and that always seems to be the trend anyways, when something takes a downturn, the tertiary markets don't quite get hit as hard. So good news for our area. When you go over this information and you look at it and you live and breathe it every day, you're always looking for the positives out of things. Obviously there's a lot of negatives, but there's also a lot of positives. And I see this as a very big positive for our industry and for our area here. So excited about that one there. So the CARES Act and the PPP. CARES Act was intended to provide fast and direct economic assistance for American workers and families, small businesses, preserve jobs in for American industries. $2 trillion, the largest ever signed stimulus package. Everyone knows about it. Everyone's been reading about it. It's been on the news. I won't dive into it, but I will say there's going to be flaws to it. Everyone will say coulda, shoulda, woulda, but I will say that, I feel like the government did act quick on it, and they got money out there pretty fast, faster than I can remember things getting out there. Then Paycheck Protection Program through the Small Business Administration, which provided the loans, and that stimulus package was $350 billion, like we talked about before. The PPP was out of funds by April 16th. They did a second one, which gave another $310 billion that started April 27th. That is really where we saw, we constantly ask our group here, we meet every day, 2 groups, the property management and the advisor side every morning, and we discuss all this stuff that's going on. Quick chats, half-hour long every morning, and just to stay in tune with one another while everyone's kind of working from home and out of the office. And, we stay in tune with each other and always ask, hey, have you heard who's got it? Not specifically, but have you heard people that have received it? And for the longest time, it was no, no, no. We know people that applied, but we don't know anyone that's received it. Well, after, towards the end of, or right when the second one started, I think some of the first round started coming in, and now we're seeing the second round. So we are seeing businesses, we are seeing people get it, from small loans to big loans. So it's definitely working. It's definitely coming in to play now. So, which is a good sign. So types of relief. We'll get down to what us as property managers have been dealing with, over the past couple months when we started this. We looked, no one was prepared for this. So we had to prepare for the worst. And our fear was no one's going to pay. Everyone's nervous. No one's going to have money. No one's going to pay anything. We're going to be, trying to knock on doors. Hey, can you pay the landlords? So we put some standards, we set up some things in our office to kind of track all this stuff. And, we didn't want to get caught off guard, and, our fiduciary duties are to, our landlords and our tenants. So we want to make sure that we have that communication and we have that, program set up in house. So we kind of sat down, we were talking about the different ways, the different things that can be done. Plus people also were coming at us with information. So a couple different ways to do relief is abatement. This would forgive the tenant of their past rents with no payback. Most landlords have not agreed to this, and this is not something that we recommend. I think that there's still business going on. There's assistance out there for businesses, and not to say that you won't need to go here or someone wouldn't need to do it, but we try to. The word abatement is it's a pretty strong word. Try not to go there. Another type is deferral. This would allow tenants to defer, an agreed upon month's payback that the landlord and tenant agreed to over a period of time in the future months. So a lot of the landlords have agreed to accept this with repayment by the end of the year. So one of the good things, once again, kind of try to find a positive in anything. I don't know if this is positive, but I think it's just kind of good timing, where it's in the middle of, the beginning towards the middle of the year when all this went down. So there's still time. A lot of people are talking about, a month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever it may be. Now that businesses are opening back up, we can start talking about repayment plans. But there's still enough time left in the year to recoup that money. So a lot of landlords that we deal with that's been, hey, I just want to get the money before the end of the year, get it back this year. Some people are asking to spread it out over time. And I think if you're getting 1 to 2 months, 3 months, and you've got 6 months to pay that back, that's paying about a month and a half of rent. But you also hopefully got money from the SBA, the PPP loans to help with that. So that is what we recommend to most folks. Then you have a blend and extend, and this could actually come into play in several different ways. But this would allow the tenant's rent to be forgiven over a period of months in return to extend the term of their lease or exercise an option term early. So if you've got a 5-year lease with a 5-year option and you're in the last year of that or year and a half, then say, hey, you know what, we'll give you the 2 months free and let's extend or exercise that 5-year option. So you're getting them to do it early. So that's the benefit for you. And, and they don't, you don't have to abate their rent during that time, but you maybe give them a rent reduction or you incentivize them to extend, and it's a win-win for both parties. And so rent relief, when we started receiving rent relief calls on March 24th, March 23rd was the day of non-essential closure. So that's when it all started coming. We started receiving those phone calls, and that's when we were like, uh-oh. So we started tracking it. We started in our meetings. I was letting our folks know out of our portfolio, what percentage of people are reaching out to us and actually saying, hey, what do I do? Not everyone was asking for something. They were saying, what if? So we were kind of talking to them, working with them, but we got an early jump on it. And that's when we weren't sure how much, how long. Nobody knew anything at that time. It seemed to be that, 3 months was the magic number. You had banks talking 3 months. You had, everyone was saying 3 months, 3 months. So a lot of people just were calling up, hey, can I get 3 months? Can I get 3 months? And, some of them we're hey, maybe, let's talk about it. Let's not jump. We don't know how long this is going to be. And because you want to work with them as well, too. But 3 months was the big thing. And I just thought every local and small business, I was like, oh gosh, this is going to be so much. I think the nationals will be fine, but these smaller businesses are going to have trouble. And so then we started to hear from the national tenants. And most of them, they had a little bit of a different tone. They weren't asking for 3 months, this or that. They were just saying, we're not paying rent at this time, and we will discuss it, next month. We'll see how long it goes. So there wasn't really too much negotiation or talking. They were just there, and there wasn't, you didn't know what the future held with them. They were just saying, we're not paying today. Most of them we would talk to is at least pay the operating cost. If you're not going to pay the base rent, pay the operating cost. So that way, there's money to run the shopping center or the office building, whatever it may be. They are now just starting to reach out now that businesses and states are starting to open. They're starting to reach out now to kind of talk about the repayment plan. Very little, whether it's local, whether it's regional, whether it's national, very little are actually saying, I'm not paying you, or I don't owe that money, or they're not fighting it, saying, they're all saying, hey, I couldn't make the payment. Now moving forward, how are we going to repay that deferred rent or that back rent? So that is a good sign. And I think that's due to, I think people are very positive going forward, that once we open up, things, won't be back to normal. Is there such thing as normal? Is it the new normal? It's the big topic there. But they feel very confident about it. So they are coming up with the nationals are coming up with these payment plans. The locals, they are asking for it, but a lot of them started receiving the money. Then they started paying with their PPP money. So things at the very beginning, it was, like I said, we didn't know what was going to happen, but I will say today I feel a lot better about where we are than where I thought we could have ended up. So these are some recommendations, some key steps for relief agreements, or when you're negotiating them. Communication between the tenant and the landlord is key. You have to you have to let them know that you're here to help them, empathize with them, and ensure you'll work with them. Some of them at the beginning, they didn't want to talk to us because they couldn't pay the rent. And we're like, no, we understand that. We know you can't pay the rent. We're here. Let's discuss it. Let's discuss how we're going to move forward and do it together. So you want to encourage the tenants to keep up communications, written and verbal. It's good to talk to them so they can hear your voice and hear, your empathy toward them. But you also want it in writing, whether it's an email or whatever, just to kind of keep track of the conversation. And then have them provide proof of applying for the PPP money. Make sure that they're doing it. Here at SVN, all of our tenants, we send out communications either weekly or when, new big information came out. So we were sending to our tenants all the information, here are the links, here are the, go apply for this money now before it runs out. Here's the help, here's the SBA. When you went on our website, we had our COVID box that came up, and when you clicked on that, we updated the links for all kinds of different things, whether it was health, whether it was for business, whether it was for loans. But we wanted to make sure that, we felt that that's our duty as, we went into overdrive. A lot of people businesses weren't open or weren't working. We were in overdrive trying to make sure that we were doing the best that we could to provide the information, help lead them. We weren't there to interpret information, but we were there to make sure they had access to it, make sure they were on top of it. Some of them were, some of them weren't. So I'm glad that we had a chance to do that. We also communicated with our landlords and let them know what we were sending out to them. But it was, communication is key on both parts of it. And when I was doing this, we're in such a weird time because things change so fast. What I would have talked about 3 weeks ago is different than what I would talk about today. But it seems like I'm talking, this is what happened, this is what happened, this is what happened, you know, kind of like it's past, like it's not here. We're still in it today. And so when I talk about, you know, working these deals and, you know, that's not what we've done or what people have done. This is what we're doing today and what you're going to do in the future. So it's not over as far as this is concerned. You know, we still need to communicate, stay in touch with the tenants, let them know you're there to help them out, and try not to abate rent, and tenants try not to ask for it. You know, don't be too greedy about what you're asking for. Don't try to take advantage of the situation. We're all in this together. Everyone needs the assistance, the landlords, the tenants, everyone needs it. So, you know, our recommendation, you know, is to defer rent and set up a payment plan. You got plenty of time left in the year to make that happen. If you need to go into 2021, then so be it. But what, you know, the main thing is you want to set a tenant up. Do not set a tenant up for a repayment failure. Make sure it's attainable. You don't want to say, okay, well, you missed 3 months, I need it back in 2 months. Well, even if you said you missed 3 months, I need it back in 3 months, it's going to be pretty hard, because even though everything's open, you know, it takes time for things to start rolling again. So make sure, you know, it fits your financial needs of your property, and it also coincides with what they are able to do. You don't want to keep going back and revisiting it. You just want to make sure it makes sense for both parties. Defer the base rent, but try to collect on your triple net fees, whether it's triple net, double net. If your tenant is paying your operating costs of real estate taxes, insurance, but specifically CAM, you want to make sure you collect that money. You want to be able to maintain the property, keep cutting the grass, you know, maintenance, security. You need that money to maintain your property. So defer the rent, but try to keep the CAM coming in, and put it in writing. A lot of us here at SVN, everything we do is in writing. It's you know, we cross the T's twice and dot the I's twice here. But, you know, lots of times landlords, you know, you get very friendly with your tenants and, oh, no problem, just pay me, you know, we'll work that out. Make sure you get it in writing. Do not make a verbal agreement when it comes to this. If you decide to sell your property and it's not clear of what happened or what to account for money or loss of money. And if you don't, you know, you should create a lease amendment. Attach it to the original lease, both parties sign it, but at a minimum have an agreement in writing of some sort, whether it's through email, whatever it may be. But the best thing to do is make it as official as possible, even if it's your good friend. So some things to keep in mind as we move forward here. PPP loans are coming through more and more each day. We're hearing about them. So just looked at a statistic last night. Three out of four loans are under $150,000, which is a good sign. At the beginning, it wasn't like that. A lot of big companies took these big monster loans. They did say if you're a publicly traded company that you need to return those loans. So I think by May 7th, I think 500 million were returned. So now, you know, the one thing that a lot of people that I've talked to that are very excited, or, you know, that are happy of what happened, whether, you know, political spectrum you want to look at, is this money really did go to the people it was supposed to go to. It really did. You can say all these bigger companies got big bailouts. Some of them did. They're industries that employ a lot of people, but it was a different bailout. But for the PPP money, it went and was directed to the right people. And it shows you right here, 3 out of 4 of those loans were for under 150,000. So those are the small businesses in our neighborhood, in our area. Those are the people that need the money. And, you know, so keep in mind, there's the tenants are getting this money. And but you got to be patient. It's a process. Also remember that they need to use it. They will get forgiveness on this money if it's used for the right reasons, like rent. Obviously payroll, but rent is one of them too. So if they don't want to pay this money back, do they have to use it for rent? No, they could keep it and just use it, and it'll be a loan and they'll pay it back. But I think most people don't want to lose what they have. And also keep in mind that it has to be spent within 8 weeks from once you get it. So, you know, they need to use it now. And so that's why you want to be in contact. Don't wait to talk to your tenants and say, hey, you need to, you know, pay the rent, the PAX rent. Like, oh, you spent that money. You know, they've got eight weeks to use it, and they will use it in those 8 weeks. So the money's out there to help everybody. And most people from every experience that we've had, they're doing the right thing. I'm not saying no one's doing the wrong things. They certainly are. Keep in mind, national tenants may not open just because your state is open. They close differently, and they also will open differently. A lot of them, even before the closure of business or the closure of non-essential businesses, a lot of national tenants, they closed anyways, just for logistics purposes, and also just for, looking out for their employees. So they close differently. They'll also open differently. Your state next to you may not, be open in the same way. And if that's the same region, they may just, if you're a one business owner, you've got one office to worry about, real easy to figure out how you want to do it. When you've got multiple ones, you really got to plan it. So don't be surprised just because the state's open that they're not open, but they will open as soon as they can, obviously. And keep in mind, you cannot evict or charge late fees until 30 days after the state of emergencies are lifted. Courts will not hear new cases until they catch up. I think in Maryland, I think it's June 25th that the courts will be open and start to hear new evictions, but that's what they're saying today. So obviously if they're, jammed up or backed up, it could be later than that. So, don't think that that's the solution. Work with your tenants. Now, if this was a problem child before this all started, that's a different story. But you still have an opportunity. Maybe they got some money, maybe they can catch up. But that's not the first solution. First solution is it will be cheaper in most cases to work out a deal now than to find a new tenant down the road. So, work out that payment plan, work with them, the tenants, you come up with a good payment plan as well, because I'm sure you want to stay there. But it is cheaper, to work out that plan today than to lose that rent forever and then to find a new tenant. We don't know what the future holds. It seems bright. There's, getting back to business is, where do we go from here? Where are we at today? And businesses are opening back up locally and across the country, not at full length, but they are open up to at least the point where people's attitudes, in my opinion, have changed. You see people are out and about. In our particular area here, the weather's warmer. You just see a whole different sense. And, I say that as a good thing. Obviously, in that same sentence, we still want to remain safe. We still want to make sure we're doing the right things. But customers are out there. They're ready to get out there and spend money. And especially in our area, in tertiary markets as well, is they want to spend locally. They see it's their friends out there, it's their neighbors that have the restaurants and the businesses that they see being hurt. So those will be the first places they go. And so they're ready. Not that they just want to go waste money, but people have been cooped up. I mean, this has been, usually a cabin fever you get when you have a snowstorm and you're snowed in for a day or two. This is a little bit different here. Lease negotiations are starting back up that were on hold. So that's a good sign. It's confidence. It's tenants and national tenants showing confidence that, hey, we're ready to move forward. Obviously they put it on hold because where are you going to go from there if you can't open up? So those are starting to kind of get back into communication. Industrial leases are very strong due to essential services, logistics, distribution. Office leases should remain strong as most remain open. Many rents should be paid by the end of the year. We've already got payment plans on our side that should be the case. If everyone does what they say they're going to do, then we should be in good shape for the most part. It's not going to be 100%, but I think it's a lot better than what people would have predicted 3 months ago or 2.5 months ago. And keep an eye out for the new business concepts. These are the times when recessions or major disasters or people come out of the woodwork with new concepts. This is a time where we weren't adapting for a day or two or for a week because it snowed, or we were adapting for months, 2.5 months, and to learn something new takes 30 days. Well, we were doing everything for more than 30 days. Comes down to what we're doing today, video conference. How many video conferences have we been on? And just some good news, and not predicting, I'm not an economist, but I woke up this morning, they said the Dow Jones was up over 25,000, which is a good sign. When all this hit, I think it was down to 18,000. Like I said, I'm not an economic advisor. I'm a real estate advisor, but I just thought that was good news, and I try to make things as positive as possible. That's what Brent Miller told me to do today, so that's what I'm doing. So thank you for joining us. I know I talked fast, but I wanted to get through that because I wanted to get some time for question and answering. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Wes.
All right, Rick, great job, my man. Go ahead and unshare your screen. Oh, great, you're ahead of me.
I'm on it. This ain't my first rodeo.
Good job. Well, if everyone doesn't know, Rick spends more time in front of people than he does a computer, which is what he's supposed to be doing. So I think he did a phenomenal job navigating through the technological aspects of what we're doing here today. What I'm first going to do is go ahead and I'm going to bring the poll up real quick. Just going to share these results. It looks like we have about 70% of the attendees in today's call have answered. So I think that's a pretty good amount to go ahead and share the results. I can't share it, so I'm just going to go ahead and read them out to you real quick. So have you personally been affected by COVID-19 closures? 30% of people had said, answered no, and 70% answered yes. So the 30% is probably in the category that Rick was discussing in the office market or the industrial market. I'm going to skip the question 2, what industry do you operate in? That was more for us so we could see kind of who's in the audience. Have you received funds from any government stimulus plan? This answer surprised me a little bit, especially after what we saw on the social media channels and talking to people where they said, I can't have, or I haven't had access to the stimulus funds. 56% today said yes, they have received government stimulus or funds from the government, whether it be PPP or the other options. Let's see, here was a good one. How optimistic are you for a recovery from the COVID-19 crisis this calendar year? 1 being not very at all, and number 5 being 100% absolutely. We're going to fully recover and pick back up where we left. Over 70%, so the options were 1 through 5, over 70% chose 3 and 4. So essentially fairly optimistic that we're going to return, maybe not exactly to where we left off. And if you add in those who chose number 5, that is about 80% of people, over 80%, 85% today said yes, they plan to expect either a partial recovery all the way up to a full 100% recovery this calendar year. Great news, great optimism out there. Mm-hmm. And final question, more of a political question, but we won't go there today other than this answer. Do you agree with your local government approach to closures and public safety related to the COVID-19 pandemic? And 70% of you today said somewhat. So I think what that indicates to me is that yes, you agree, but you probably would have tweaked it a little bit, you know, and I don't envy these guys in those positions, focusing more on our governors in the states that we do business in. I don't envy their position at all, neither, I'm sure, do any of you. They had incredibly tough decisions to do or to make. And I think for the most part, I think they did a really good job. So we'll leave that political discussion right there. And now, Rick, I got at least 6 questions that have come in. So let me go ahead and, oh, sorry. Okay, here we go. All right, so the first question that came in, Rick, this is directed toward you. What tenants should landlords look for in the future? Great question.
Yeah, really good question is, and that's one of the things as we go through this process and as we look forward, how we're going to move forward and what sectors do you look in, you know, and it's whether it's from an investment standpoint or it's for looking for tenants. So one of the things I would say is what I tell my kids as we go through this, and I said, hey, look around, see who's still working today. You know, as I have 2 young daughters, it's who's essential, who continued to work, who continued to get paid. So, I turn around and kind of can apply that to whether it's businesses or whether it's office buildings or shopping centers. So yeah, if you have a tenant and you know that they are an essential business and through a situation like this, they will remain open. I mean, just imagine everyone right now who has a grocery anchored shopping center is probably thanking their lucky stars that they have a grocery anchored shopping center. It definitely helps out. And it also helps out when even the other businesses that are in there. So I would say going forward, not to say you don't look for the other things that are non-essential, but I mean, hey, it's if there's someone that's essential and you can put that mix together, or you're seeking, for tenants, I would seek those. I mean, obviously it's an impact, and it's helped them get through this time. We've had some centers that are straight retail non-essential, and the whole shopping center was pretty much closed. So that's a tough one.
Oh, it is a tough one, Rick, and I think you answered it well. Of course, time is going to tell the true answer to that question, as we truly don't know the impact that every business has seen. Another question that's come in, another great one. Let's see. What trends or changes do you see for tenants when seeking out a new space as we move forward?
Yeah, and it's that's a hard one. Another great question, and that's another one to see where are we going in the future, and where do we look? And is there going to be changes? Is there not? Lots of times you have people that react pretty quick. So in the very near future, people could look for space differently. People could look at it as we've gone to an open floor plan. And over the past years, as you look right behind you in our office, we have a very nice open floor plan there. But maybe in the future, people want back to offices where in case something were to happen, they'd have their own space to work inside. And they wouldn't have to put up plexiglass between the shared space. Obviously from sorry, I was looking at the screen and not the camera. Obviously in the bigger cities, they have the WeWork spaces. Those guys are tough. I mean, they've lost a lot of membership, and they're going to be in a tough spot because people don't want to share. I'm not saying that's going to be a super duper trend. And like you said on the other thing, only time's going to tell. But, that could be something. Just maybe people want bigger space. Maybe they want smaller space. Maybe one thing that does make me a little bit nervous is I think people really learned how to work from home and saw, normally if you're in the office and you go home for a day and you bring your laptop, whatever, it's just uncomfortable. Well, when you're forced to do it for 30, 60 days, you may have invested in some extra stuff, and now you got a whole TV screen to work on. And, so some businesses might say, hey, let's kind of do half and half. They might need less space. I don't know if that's the reason that you've got a production problem, I think, in my opinion, for that. But those are the trends, two trends that come to mind that you could be going, they could be looking at that, and especially people that are looking here in the near future. So, that's one of the advantages, in our office of having so many people that deal with it is we can talk about those trends on a daily basis. We can talk about it in real time to say, hey, this is what's going on. This is what I experienced today. So that's one of the advantages here with our group. So I do like that. I don't know if I answered that very well, but that's my take.
Well, it's a tough answer. Yeah, because we really don't
I don't have a crystal ball, Wes.
Well, it's a question that we haven't been getting a lot because obviously we're showing less properties today. There's a tremendous activity still in the market, but that activity has not necessarily come from expanding companies looking for additional office space or additional retail space. So we don't know yet exactly what tenants and how they're going to react. Right. One thing I think we are going to see is a change more in the industrial market more than anything else. Increased manufacturing space, increased storage and distribution space. And that's going to be a challenge for each market. A market like ours on the lower shore of Maryland, where we have extremely low inventory. So that's going to be a challenge for us. We are ready to meet that demand because we have several industrial and business parks that are ready, that have been ready for the last 10 years, ready for development. I think we're going to see the biggest changes there. Time will tell if we see any changes, major changes to the office market, if people will start downsizing depending on the results that they've had over the last 2 to 3 months of people working remotely. So if they've had extremely successful results, maybe they will downsize. But I don't think we're going to see a huge disruption, because at the end of the day, on the so the folks that I speak with on the national level that kind of follow those trends on the office market, people want to be together.
Absolutely. It's yeah, and I don't think that's going to be an impact. It just may be things that people ask for, and I don't know that that's the solution. I don't know if I agree with the solution. You know, I'm in front of, I like to talk, as you can see, and I'm in front of people, and it's kind of, so what we did here in our office, where everyone's kind of working from home, and we get on a video call every morning, and it's really just so we can chit chat with one another. It's kind of the cooler talk as you would be walking through the office. So I think the whole point of everyone having a tough time staying home is that's how we're built. We're built to be out and about and to talk to people. Not everyone, but the majority of people. So the whole working from home thing sounds great, but I don't think it's not. I couldn't do it. I've been in the office every day, and my wife probably appreciates that. So
She does.
I hope she's not watching.
She does appreciate it. She told me. I think we're going to see how that changes based on the different types of offices and the environments they have. I mean, heck, we've even seen video medical office visits. PRMC put out a poll recently, and it was largely focused, I participated in it, it was largely focused on sort of what I call kind of the home video office visit, you know, with your doctor. Do you feel comfortable?
Right.
Things of that nature. So yes, so we'll see how it changes as we move forward and companies adapt. So we're going to move on to the next question, Rick.
Sure.
We have some more lined up here. So in your opinion, Rick, not necessarily opinion, but I guess fact, how has SVN Property Management helped landlords and their tenants get through this crisis? So you touched on a little bit of that, some at least ideas. So as far as taking your ideas that you talked about in your presentation and putting them into practice. So how has SVN Property Management done that?
Yeah, so I think in several different ways. Like I said, you know, the very first thing is we're always forward thinking here. So you know, we try not to react. We try to be very proactive on anything, you know, when it comes down to just regular property management in our maintenance department. It's what we do. So in this situation, how we've helped is first is the communication, I think, has been key. The communication with our tenants. And it's not like we have 5 tenants that we need to kind of talk to. I mean, we have a lot of them. So and we have a lot of people in our office talking to them at the same time. So in order for everyone to be on the same page when you're not in the same office, and when you're working from home in satellite, we had to come up with a way where we all would be on the same page. So we did that with Google Docs and sharing documents, and plus our software system allows us to all access it via the web and track that information. So that was key. And so, you know, it wasn't so much our landlord saying, hey, who's paying? We already had the information. We knew who was paying. We knew who didn't pay, why they weren't paying. We had a story you know, for them. So we were very proactive about that. So, and we helped negotiate a lot of deals, you know, where some people came in with, you know, offers that were, in my opinion, were kind of outrageous or greedy or aggressive, I'd say. And the landlord was like, well, I guess. And I'm like, well, I don't think you really need to do that. So, and not to pin one against the other, but I look at it as in these situations, you know, you know, our landlords are our clients, but our tenants are our clients as well too. So I really remove myself from it and look at it as like, hey, what's fair on both sides? And like I talked about, let's make it attainable for them, the tenant, and let's make it, you know, so the landlord doesn't go under. But, you know, we have been very proactive. We were really, really, really proactive on getting these folks the information to apply for the loans. Like I said, a lot of them were on it, but a lot of them didn't know about it. They're like, where do I get it? What do I have to do? And, you know, I went through a lot of these steps just so I knew how to do it, so we could get them to do it. And it's starting to pay off because they're getting that money and starting to pay up their rent and get back into it. So, one of the biggest things we did was make sure that we're checking on the properties. We do a written report once a month. And I told my guys, I said, you know what? Forget the full report. I said, I want you out there weekly. We have to go by each location weekly, especially the ones that don't have businesses that are open. You know, they were sure, I'm sure they were going to check on their stuff, but you know, especially there's a lot of landlords that are our clients that aren't in the area. They just wouldn't have been able to do that. But it's where our people working extra hard. They looked at me like, you want me to go by how many times? I was like, once a week, we got to do it. And no, but they were more than happy to do it. And I think that it just shows that we had to do our part. You know, we were kind of in overtime. We weren't on vacation. Not that people were on vacation, but it was, we were in the office every day working. So.
Rick, thanks, man. Yeah, so much content here. I'm going to ask you, actually, I'm going to answer a question. It's geared more toward industrial space, and there's an economic development director online, Jean. She says, I've received several inquiries for cold storage facilities to support food distribution, et cetera. Are there any plans to construct these types of facilities or to convert existing warehouse space? And that is a great, great question. That falls exactly in line with what I mentioned earlier. We're going to start to see different requests from industrial users and their space needs. So I have also received those same requests, Gene. And the short answer now is I don't think so, as far as are there developers that are in the process of building these types of facilities. There are landlords that are contemplating it for sure. One of the challenges is, of course, the expense factor relative to the rent. You know, a lot of tenants can't afford to come in and have the landlord install cold storage warehousing into their facility and then obviously charge that back to the tenant or at least some of those tenant improvements. So it's largely a mathematical formula that I will think will work itself out, but I've also received the same request, and hopefully we see more of it, because at least 3 times a year, I get requests from, you know, whether it's brokers out of Philadelphia or larger markets that are surrounded by us for cold storage space, because they literally have none. And we haven't either. We've only had one cold storage space available in the last 2 or 3 years that I can think of, and that was in Somerset County. So great question, Gene. Great observation. Rick, in a very short answer, because we only have 2 minutes left.
Yes.
Answer it as in a bullet point. Of the properties we manage, how many businesses do you know of that have gone out of business or are anticipating closing? So just give us a number or a percentage out of the over 1,000 tenants that we manage that you know of.
Due to the COVID or just
yes.
in general?
Specifically due to Corona, yes.
0 that I know.
So you have not been contacted by any business saying that, hey, we're closing, we need to work on a lease breakup?
Nope, no, not one. Now, you know, as we sit here today, but I can't, you know, look into the future and say, hey, we've got a payment plan with this person and it's going to work. But for the most part, we have not had every agreement, everything that we've talked to with somebody was to sign and move on and do a payment plan. But as we sit here today, there's not one person said, I'm not going to make it. Which
good. Yeah,
that remains. So let's get out there and support them.
I do feel like I need to answer this one, or at least bring it up. Former Senator Jim Mathias is on today, and he has commented and also asked a question. Ricky says, thank you very much for sharing all your experience and information with us today. His question, in more of a comment too, is more related to the court system, since the courts may very well experience an influx of landlord-tenant cases. His question relates around how do we speculate how courts in our states and other states are going to be handling these types of cases and then decide the fate of tenant liability in the long-term lease situations. It's a good question, Senator, and I don't think any of us are going to have that answer right now. I think, in my personal opinion, judges and the courts are going to be very tenant friendly from a overall mindset, but also being mindful that it's going to be a case-by-case basis. So if it's a mom and pop business that's been extremely hurt, such as a local restaurant, I don't think the judge is going to put the hammer on them. If it's a national tenant, I won't throw a name out, that is in a court landlord-tenant situation, we'll see how that plays out. But no, we don't know the answer to that. But great comment. I'm going to go ahead and share some good news here with you guys. I pulled up, so normally, for those of you that attend our physical forum at Salisbury University, Rick has taken my place today. What I would normally do is share where we've been as far as stats and the market and number of transactions and so forth. We didn't feel that was important here today, given the situation that we're in. We didn't want to look backwards. We wanted to look forward, which is why Rick is here today and sharing his experience and thoughts on it. But I will share, as of today, this is January to today, May 27th of 2019, the Lower Shore, including Sussex County. So Wacomico, Somerset, Worcester, and Sussex, because we do a lot of business in Sussex, and that's very much part of our region and our metropolitan statistical area. We had 45 commercial sale transactions. That was year to date in 2019, 45. In 2020, as of today, 56. So right there, we have over a 10% increase in the number of closed transactions. It shows you right there, there is still a lot of optimism in the market, and people are temporarily hitting the pause button because the government told them they had to, obviously for good reasons, but they are ready to pick back up. So Rick, thanks very much. I think that covers most of the time that we have here today. We do have other questions coming in here. What I'm going to do is go ahead and answer those questions to you folks separately from today in the interest of time. So Brent, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to you. And guys, before I do that, don't forget June 13th, Annabon Basu, he's going to be here presenting on more of the macro as well as the Maryland economy. And we'll go ahead and get those invitations out to you as well. So Rick, thanks again. Brent, it's all you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is 2 weeks from today, as Wes mentioned, Annabon Basu. Thank you very much, Rick. Awesome, great information that is very helpful for our clients. Wanted to thank Salisbury University, Mario, behind the scenes helping us out there, and then all of our sponsors, M&T Bank, Delmarva Veteran Builders, Merrill Lynch, Hebron Savings Bank, Insurance Market, Bank of Delmarva, Farm Credit, Avery Hall, TRS CPA Group, Paradise Energy Solutions, and WR McCain for helping us put this series on and supporting us. Our committee members, thank you very much. Without them, we would not be here. Amy Miller, Rick Tilghman, Wesley Cox, Tony Inslee, Steve Evans, Kelly Jeter, and Amber Bostwick. Also wanted to give a shout out in reference to our 2019 market report. Those of you who have registered for this event, you have received this in the mail with some other fun things, some tchotchkes along with that. It's got a lot of information about the market in general on the Delmarva Peninsula. This is an exclusive piece that we put together just for our attendees and clients. So if you have not received that, please reach out to us and we can get that in the mail to you shortly. So with that, I want to thank you all for taking the time today. Great session, Rick, and very informative, and have a great week, and we'll see you 2 weeks from today, Wednesday, 10 a.m. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Hey, guys. Thank you.